In this Diablo 4 video, I'm going to be showing you my Werebear Pulverizer build, which is a beginner druid build that's aimed at World Tiers 1 and 2, the first 30 or so levels of the game, to kind of give you an idea of how you can play a Werebear in this game, and it's a bit different than the Werebear build that I made in the beta. So there are some similarities to that build, of course, and the general strategy with this build is to use overpowered pulverizes to wipe out packs of enemies in one swing. And then, of course, to use Poison Creeper as well to root enemies in place, allowing you to get up on them and then pulverize them. Pulverize can overpower every 12 seconds. That's 2 seconds more duration to charge up than it was in the beta where it was 10 seconds, as long as your HP stays over 80% for that whole duration. So having high max life, paying attention to your damage mitigations, and using potions as necessary to keep your health topped off is how you're going to make sure that you overpower your Pulverize all the time. Overpower damage in Diablo 4 is extra damage equal to the sum of a player's current and fortified life and has a native chance to hit naturally when attacking with regular skills, but this can be increased. It's a very low chance though. Because Enhanced Pulverize does this guaranteed if you're over 80% HP once every 12 seconds, this is particularly deadly and synergizes well with how Overpower works, since you need high HP to get the most out of it anyway. But if you're wondering why you see Overpower or blue numbers damage sometimes when you're not using Pulverize, this is why. But this is not the only way we get overpowered damage with this build. In fact, there are a few ways. Another way is by using the Obsidian Slam Spirit Boon in conjunction with the legendary aspect of the Ursine Horror, which not only makes your Pulverize deal damage over time after it's used, but also converts it to an Earth skill, which makes the Spirit Boon apply to it. You need to only defeat 10 enemies before using Pulverize to get this to trigger, and oftentimes you'll overpower and kill 10 enemies in one swing, which will result in an immediate second overpower. And last is the use of Provocation, which allows you to overpower every 20 seconds if you've remained in Werebear form for 20 seconds. This is not easy to do, but not impossible either, as the timer does stop for a few seconds if you return to human form, so you have some leeway before it's wiped out entirely. You can also simply swing your maul to keep you in Werebear form if necessary, as this prevents you from changing back into human form. Maintaining close to max HP is vital for this build because that's how we're going to get Overpower Pulverize attacks regularly, which drastically boosts its damage, though there's also a big focus on mitigating damage through resistances and Fortify, which subsequently boosts Overpower damage anyway. Ursine's Strength also boosts your damage by 30% while over 80% HP, so you get the idea how this build works. So first on our list is, of course, Pulverize. We've gone through this quite a bit, so I'm not going to stay on this too much, but obviously the strategy here is to take the Enhanced Pulverize passive, which allows you to get this overpowered Pulverize every 12 seconds, which just about one-shots every normal enemy and severely weakens everything else. But just a quick reminder that if you do drop below 80% HP at any time while this cooldown is on effect, it will stop counting until you get your health back up over 80%, and then it will start again from 1. So you need to make sure you keep your health over 80% as much as possible. Having high max life, having Fortify, having barriers are all great for this build to make sure that this doesn't happen to you. Maul is your basic attack spirit generator, and you'll use this when you don't have enough spirit to use Pulverize. It hits in a cone in front of you, so aim for the center of groups, and it has an extremely slow attack speed, so I highly recommend using the rapid aspect of this build in order to attack more quickly when using this skill. Otherwise, it tends to feel a little bit sluggish. You'll need to use it in order to generate spirit, so either be okay with a slower attack speed or use this aspect. You can upgrade this with Enhanced Maul and Wild Maul that will knock down enemies every so often, which is great defensively. This prevents damage to you obviously when enemies are knocked down, and if you have increased damage versus crowd-controlled enemies, this will increase your damage to those enemies. Up next is Poison Creeper, which is pretty much a staple in just about every druid build, and when you're facing large groups of enemies, you're obviously going to use this, and then you're going to run into the middle of them, and you're going to Pulverize, and this is going to deal insane damage to enemies that can't move, so you can get them all grouped up, root them in place, and then Pulverize them. Now, the one downside to Poison Creeper is that it's not a Werebear skill, so if you're talking about Provocation, trying to stay in Werebear form for 20 seconds, this will pull you back into human form. But again, you have a couple seconds where you can get back into Werebear form with any other Werebear skill, so make sure after you use this, you promptly use another Werebear skill afterward, which you should naturally be doing anyway. I like to take the Brutal Poison Creeper upgrade for this, as it increases your crit chance against entangled enemies by 20%. Just so, in case you didn't know, overpower attacks can still crit on top of the damage they do, which are the orange numbers that you see on the screen. So when you crit and overpower, it's even more damage, so having good crit for this also helps. Up next, we have Debilitating Roar. This skill reduces the damage of nearby enemies by 70% for 4 seconds, and this is great for large trash balls of enemies and elites where, you're just going to be flooded with enemies really quickly. This will help keep your health topped off because they're not going to be able to do very much damage to you. And once you've enhanced Debilitating Roar with the Enhanced Debilitating Roar upgrade, then it'll also give you a good amount of Fortify when you do use it, which will increase your Overpower damage. So you might pop Debilitating Roar and then use your Pulverize afterward, hopefully overpowering in the middle of that group. And then we come to Trample. Trample is both a great AoE skill and focus skill if you're trying to focus down one enemy, and excels at defeating elites and packs of enemies alike, particularly if you've overpowered it with Provocation. It's your hardest hitting Druid skill, and you'll want to try and use it to run enemies into walls for maximum damage. This will leave them stunned, allowing you to go to town on them without fear of retaliation. Once you have the Savage Trample upgrade, this will provide you with 20 Spirit on use, which is excellent since you'll have to use Maul a lot with this build, and this allows you to use it a little less often. And then lastly, we come to Grizzly Rage. This skill increases your damage and damage reduction by 20%, increasing your damage each second you remain in its form, as well as extending its duration for each kill by 1 second by up to 10 seconds. This skill is a great way to further mitigate damage against boss encounters, but it also works well in groups of enemies as well, where you can extend its duration. Enhanced Grizzly Rage makes you unstoppable for its duration, which is phenomenal as it means you cannot be crowd controlled whatsoever while it's active. You will use this when facing elites and challenging bosses a lot, and the final upgrade, Supreme Grizzly Rage, gives you Fortify every second it's active, helping to prevent even more damage while simultaneously making your overpower stronger. Final tips. Bonuses you want to look out for are, of course, Overpower damage. You can get this on two-handed maces, and this is going to natively boost your overpower damage, and then you can get an additional overpower damage boost besides that boost on the weapon to really gain overpower damage so that you absolutely one-shot enemies. Other bonuses that are good are critical strike chance, damage to close enemies since this is a melee build, damage to healthy enemies since you usually overpower first with your Pulverize, and that usually hits enemies that are at full health. Willpower is good for skill damage and overpower damage, so make sure you have a lot of willpower. And then life on kill to help top off your health now and then so that you stay over that 80% HP threshold. I do want to note, though, that you should be taking the weapon that has the highest damage, and on your gear, you're not going to be, perfect when you're leveling up. So don't try and min-max your gear constantly as you're leveling, particularly between, levels 1 and 30, where leveling is very fast. You'll just simply spend so much time, it'll frustrate you that your gear constantly, things keep dropping that are better. So don't worry too much about min-maxing your gear, but those are the bonuses you do want to look out for. Other aspects you want to be on the lookout for as you're leveling up that you can't really guarantee that you're going to get because they're random are aspect of the Trampled Earth. This makes it so Trample summons landslide pillars during its duration, and it also makes it into an Earth skill, which allows you to use the Obsidian Slam passive to overpower it, kind of helping facilitate this build even more by increasing the damage and getting your overpower on it more easily. Another one you want to look out for is aspect of the Rampaging Werebeast. This increases the duration of Grizzly Rage, which is your ultimate. And in addition, critical strikes while you're in Grizzly Rage actively increase your critical strike damage for its duration, so you'll get even more damage when you're using it. So that wraps up the Werebear Pulverizer build. I hope that gave you some tips on how to get started playing a Werebear. We'll obviously have an updated version of this build once we hit level 50, and we start getting into the beginning of endgame with, more optimized legendary aspects from drops, and obviously getting into the Paragon system a little bit. So what do you guys think of the build? Are you guys loving playing Druid as much as I am? Let me know in the comments below.